Hey to all you Matthew studying peeps out there. Happy, Thursday, January 18th, 2024. Who knew? So today's lesson in Matthew is out of Matthew 13, 53 through 58, where Jesus is rejected at Nazareth. So we're going to look at that. Start with verse 53, and this lesson's going to take a turn. I'm going to talk about that, how Jesus went back to his home and where he was raised in Nazareth. Now, he was born in Bethlehem, but Nazareth is his home, and people knew him and his family, and they had to have known that something was going on with this man, because they knew him. When people know you in a small town, they just know you. Or they think they do. Maybe I should say. And they took offense at him. But why? They were like, how dare you, a simple carpenter, instruct and teach us? Who do you think you are? They were seeing him exclusively from a worldly point of view. And he did few miracles there. In verse 58 it says, why? Because of their unbelief. Mark even states that Jesus was amazed at their unbelief. Because remember, Daniel tells them exactly to the day when he's coming. And even the woman at the well said, are you the Messiah? They were expecting the Messiah. They knew the time frame was up. We'll look at Daniel someday if you want to. And they knew he was coming. But they still rejected him. Their hearts were so hard with sin. So, I had to think, how does one amaze God? By rejecting him? Have you ever been rejected? Have you ever felt like, and that's a real trial. Has your family ever rejected you, or friends? Anybody ever rejected the love you wanted to give them? Well, I've been rejected a time or two. And I also kind of wanted to look at that, how a trial that is. What a temptation that is to become bitter and ugly. So, and I also wanted to bring in 1 Corinthians 10:13, where it says, no temptation has faced us, but what is common to man, and Jesus makes a way of escape. I think sometimes we abuse that verse like crazy. Oh, God won't put more on me than I can bear. That's not what it's talking about. It's not talking about trials. It's talking about temptation. And sometimes I think we're tempted in so many ways, and Jesus was tempted in all the ways that we were, but he never failed. Because we refuse to see Jesus as human, just as those, he was a human, and he was tempted. And rejection would have been hard, especially if he came to save them and they rejected him. That's heartbreaking. When we're faced with a trial of rejection or any kind of temptation, and he still didn't fail, we fail a lot of times. Even in 2 Corinthians 5:16, Paul admits he had a new understanding of Jesus. And in Isaiah 53:2, it says that Jesus had an ordinary appearance. He probably wasn't, we see these pictures of him with long hair, and he's beautiful, and he's angelic looking, his face is perfectly tanned. He was just ordinary. But these people had a lack of faith. They had a lack of belief. And are we tempted sometimes with our faith to be small? And are we tempted to be bitter? Are we tempted when we face trials, when our faith is tested? Look at Ephesians 3:20. We can become bitter through temptation and trials and rejection. Jesus never became bitter. He was tempted in all ways like we are, but he never sinned. Of course, he was God in human flesh, but he was still human. He was still a man. But when you go through a trial, as we've talked about, you can put your trust in Jesus. As trials test our faith, sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. Sometimes when I'm tested, I'm thinking, well, you're not quite the Christian you thought you were. Better get your act together. Is your faith weak? Are you in the milk of the word? And I want to think about Gideon, how he did not, what he did was out of a lack of faith when he puts out the fleece. I'm not saying that's wrong, but when we don't trust God to take care of it, and God used Gideon's lack of faith, as he can ours, sometimes we just need to sit back and I want you to think about this. Sit back and realize that he's going to reward you if you have faith. Just let that sink in. You know, Abraham had a stronger type of faith than Gideon. Look at Romans 4:19 through 20. And Psalms 5:3. David says he's going to have faith in God, and I'm paraphrasing, and he expects results. I mean, we can't have faith in God when we come through trials and testing, and when we're rejected, when the word is rejected. But when we realize our faith is not what it should be, as in Mark 9:24, we can say, Lord, help my unbelief. So when you face trials, as this had to have been a trial when you go home, this had to have broke Jesus' heart. Of course, when we reject his plan of salvation, it breaks his heart. But his family, his friends, I think of all my friends here, we just know we're human, and it would be just hard. So look up, have faith. When you face temptation and a trial, a temptation, God's going to make a way of escape. And when you have a trial, have faith that God's going to carry you through. Have trust in him. Remember, there's a difference in a temptation and a trial. And in 1 Corinthians 10:13, when it's talking about temptations, it's not talking about trials. I do believe God would let you have more than you can bear. And Dr. Stanley wrote a good book, Dr. Charles Stanley, on the blessing of brokenness. When you're broken, that's when Jesus can use you. It's an amazing thing to know the blessings that God can bring you when you're broken and you realize you're nothing without Jesus. I don't want to be broken. I'm not asking God to bring on brokenness, but and I think it's hard to learn to put your faith and your trust in God. But here's to a good week. I'm trusting you'll have a good week.